really discuss the budget. And of course, the markets reacted very positively to the budget. We've seen the kind of enthusiasm in the market. 2,000 points up was the market in the day's trade. But of course, we've been trying to understand what the budget really means for the startup ecosystem. We've been looking at the key announcements. And before I can take you through the announcement, let me introduce you to a very special guest who we have today. I have with us Mr. Rehan Khan, who is the managing partner at Orias Venture Partners. Thank you very much, Mr. Khan, for joining us today on the Daily Dispatch. First of all, I'm going to run our viewers through all the top announcements that were made in the budget, and then we're going to seek your expert opinion on what it really means for the startup ecosystem, considering that you've invested in a lot of startups through your fund, and you have been a veteran in this in the startup ecosystem. So first and foremost, I want to say that the finance minister made 3 to 4 very key announcements in the startup ecosystem, and one of the announcements was with regards to a one-person company. Of course, that is something that the startup ecosystem had been waiting for, considering the fact that a one-person company has been very difficult to incorporate in the past, and there have been requirements of at least a minimum of 2 to 3 people on the board for companies. So this could perhaps be a game changer for the startup ecosystem. That's one very important announcement that was made in the budget. Of course, the finance minister also went on to say that this one-person company can be converted to any kind of company later on. So as the startup grows, the company could be converted into any other type of company. The other announcements that were made by the finance minister, which was basically to help beat the pandemic blues, the finance minister said that tax holidays for startups will be extended for 1 more year until March 2022. The same with the tax capital gains exemption, which will be extended by another year till March 2022. One very key announcement was made in the digital payment system. Because of the pandemic, digital payments have literally shot up the roof. So therefore, the finance minister really went ahead and said that, yes, we will be introducing a 1,500, that is a 1,500 crore scheme, which will help boost the kind of digital payments on the medium. Mr. Khan, I want to come to you at this point in time, saying, what do you make of the announcements for the startup sector? Do you think it was what you expected, or did you want more?
Well, no, thanks for that. I thought the one company, the one founder company thing was very, very interesting. When I started off as a founder, before I started my fund, and I did 3 companies. In many cases, when I started, I was one founder, and then you add people, right? And then you have to just take somebody else as a director, and that can lead to disputes with that person and changing them, and it's just unnecessary complexity. So I thought this was great. It's keeping with the ease of doing business, allowing people to get started, and then they can add other people as they get along in their journey. So I think that's a big tick for entrepreneurship. So that's not a gating criteria anymore for people. So I think that was good. I think as far as the 2 tax things that you mentioned, right, while they've been extended and the holiday has been increased, I don't think we saw a lot of startups avail of this even in the past, right? I mean, first of all, startups are mostly loss-making companies, so hey, what tax benefit there anyway, right? So, so I'm not sure how material this was. So I'm not counting it in my big win list, right? It's there, but it's not in my big win list. So I thought that was interesting, in its own way. But what I liked a lot was about Gift City. I know you didn't cover that point, but I like the fact that they put a lot of focus on Gift City. And they've been doing that continually, right? Last budget, in the middle of the year, and so on and so forth. And they're creating this offshore jurisdiction, which I think will help fintechs a lot from India, right? It will help funds, it will help offshore company incorporation, because what you're going to get is you're going to get offshore tax rates, but with Indian costs, right? Otherwise, operating out of Singapore or operating out of Dubai can be very expensive. It has other complications. you lose that money to those jurisdictions. So I thought that was another very good thing that happened, right? Uh, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
So I was going to say then the big disappointment, of course, was that capital gains for exits while staying private have not been given parity with public market exits, right? So I pay a much higher tax rate, as high as 40. I was starting with a base rate of 20%, and then with cess and surcharge as much as 28%. Whereas at public market long-term capital gains, I pay 10%, right? So there's this huge disparity, almost 3x higher tax for private exits. And this is for investors, right? I mean, who are the people who exit while the company is private? These are early investors, these are angel investors, these are early stage funds. They're the ones who are taking the most risk, right? And you're actually charging the highest rate of tax to them. Whereas, public investors are taking the least risk because the company is public, it's stable, and in fact, it's not even primary capital. It's secondary capital, right? It's not money. The money that you put in the stock market doesn't go into building a company, whereas the money early stage investors put actually go into building a company. So they should be given not even parity; they should be given zero tax as an incentive. So I'm very surprised that the government doesn't agree to this.
Another thing that startups were really looking forward to, and this is what we assessed when we spoke to several startups over the last couple of weeks, is some announcement on ESOPs. Because last year there was an announcement on ESOPs in the budget, which was, of course, a positive for the startup ecosystem. But of course, there is always need for some more changes or some more tweaks. So, do you
Yeah,
consider that to be a big disappointment in the
it
budget this
is.
time around?
Yeah, it also is. This whole ESOP thing needs to get resolved because this whole strike price issue needs to go away because it's ESOPs. See, what happens to a startup is when I'm starting up and I'm a young company and I've raised, let's say, internal money, seed financing, Series A financing, even Series B financing. I don't have the kind of money to pay market rates to high quality people, right? And if I want those people to move from large good companies to my startup and I can't pay their market rate, I need to give them something else in order to cover the risk that they're taking, right? And that something is ESOPs. Now, if ESOPs is not properly structured, right, then that doesn't become as big an incentive as it should be. So, the startup industry has been clamoring for that for several years now. But yeah, we're not, hopefully one day, but it hasn't happened today.
You're an investor. You've invested in so many early stage companies. But from an investor perspective, of course, one issue that a lot of startups had at this point in time was the supply of capital, considering that funds from China and Hong Kong have dried up at this point in time. So, in terms of funding, do you think that the government corpus of 945 crore rupees for startups is enough? Do you think that domestic capital is enough to really meet the needs of the Indian startup ecosystem? What more can the government do to really increase the kind of supply of domestic or foreign capital for startups?
Right. Oh, great point, Priya. See, we lost a few, I think almost 30% of capital was coming from China, right? So if we had $14 billion dollars in 2020 and $16 billion in 2019, almost $5 billion of that was coming in right from Chinese sources. Now suddenly that has gone away. There needs to be something that comes and replaces that, and that's why this whole point around tax parity for Indian capital is so important, because at the end of the day 900 crores or something like that is only is only $150 million, right? And I'm losing $5 billion on one side, so I need to create a substitute bucket to cover that gap, right? And today the situation is institutions, insurance companies, family offices, other bodies, corporates are reluctant to invest in funds and startups because of this high tax rate, right? And the stock market in India is good, right? I mean, just like you said, went up significantly today. So CIOs are saying, hey, why should I put my money over here And even if you give me a good return, my overall net return will be much lower because I'm paying so much tax, right? So I think, especially in the light of this Chinese capital having gone away, we should have taken certain steps to substitute it. And developing domestic capital would have been great. The Jayant Sinha committee strongly recommended this multiple times in their report, that you should not only give parity, but you should give a discount to people who are investing in startups and funds that invest in startups.
Yeah, in fact, Mr. Piyush Goyal, the Commerce and Industry Minister, recently said that businessmen should really pool in their wealth and create a fund that will support the domestic startup ecosystem. So that is something that we hope to see from the private side as well. But I wanted to talk to you about exits. Now, there has been a lot of chatter about IPOs and more clarity on IPO regulations for the startup ecosystem. As an investor, do you think that there is requirement from the government to come out with more structured, clear guidelines for the startup ecosystem, considering that listing in India, listing overseas is not possible without listing in India?
No, on this particular one, I'm actually satisfied with the current rules. Right? I think that our Indian the rules are fine. Right? It's a myth actually that you can't list a loss-making company. If you look at Burger King's IPO, which was 157 times oversubscribed, that was not a profitable company, right? So there are rules in place for listing unprofitable companies. I think the Indian stock market is extremely liquid, right? There's a lot of money in there. There's a dearth of tech paper. I think India is a great place to list, if you ask me. I have no complaint with the current rules for listing.
We have, Mr. Khan, we have with us Agnishwar Jayprakash, who is the founder of Garuda Aerospace. Agni, can you hear us? We are here in discussion on the budget and what it really means for the startup ecosystem. You have a startup of your own. What are your readings from the budget?
Firstly, apologize for the delay. I had a little bit of connectivity issues. For me, I felt that this particular budget, the biggest highlight from our sector, which is into drone manufacturing, as well as the drones as a service model that we have been pioneering in when it comes to aerospace and operations related to UAVs, is the FDI in insurance, which has been increased from 49% to I think 73 or 74%, which is phenomenal. And I really welcome that, because when you look at any form of equipment today, and more people are preferring in our industry to move towards the service model compared to the very capital intensive industry, which are drones. They don't want to buy it and keep it there because it becomes very expensive. And for us, when we are utilizing this, especially for us, we've been serving over 300 drones all across the country. And we've been serving not just during the COVID times, but after that, we've been serving the farmers. And, when insurance premiums do get, like when there is a lot more people involved, and especially foreign companies can get inside, it leads to lower premiums. And that leads to us having more ability to expand further. So I think from that perspective, very specific to my industry, which is into the drones and drones as a service space, I really welcome that. And I think that's one of the things from a startup perspective, which is a positive note amidst the last 1 year, which has been pretty regressive.
So I have with me an investor and a founder of a startup. The investor has told me what his disappointments are from the budget. So I'm going to ask you, Agni, if you could, highlight what your expectations were from the budget that it did not meet.
So to be very honest, I'm very sure that the budget would have received mixed responses. As soon as I saw that and preparing for our session today, you can't make everybody happy. And I'm not going to say that I got everything that I was expecting. I'm sure, when we're talking about Atmanirbhar and self-reliant India, Make in India, Startup India, you have so many initiatives. And I haven't seen, even though there has been a lot of talk about it over the years, You have a Transform India initiative, Niti Aayog, so many government departments that have cropped up over the last 5 to 6 years. And you see that there are so many schemes that are launched, but there's not enough follow through. My wish as a startup, as an entrepreneur, and also as a very seasoned businessman is that you do all these PR related activities, which are good. These are schemes, these are launches, these are grand things to make everyone excited. These are things where, like, a person who is at in Wall Street would be gung-ho about it to drive the stocks up. But when there's not enough follow through, when there's not enough funds that are infused into these initiatives, then you'll get a repeat of, let's say, an MP actually coming back and re-inaugurating the same hospital that he laid a foundation stone for. That's a lot of things that are happening, and which is a little disappointing. But at the same time, there is so much negativity around. And I am sort of a person, I'm an actioneer, and I just feel that we should make do with what we have. It's not like we get everything that we want. I just feel that with the current budget, what they've allocated for the startups per se, and now the entire division, I think the last year has changed. The HRD ministry is no more. There is an entire ministry for youth, and there's an entire ministry for education, and so they've had a very clear demarcation. I just feel that in a country where you have the largest youth population in the world, and when you have 82% at least or more skilled youth who don't have jobs, in terms of unemployment is rampant in our country, I just felt that there could be more money allocated for startups to train their resources, like much like your skill development initiatives where you're paying skill development companies. We are, like, people who are in the startup ecosystem know exactly what kind of people we want, and we will absorb them. We are looking to hire, we are looking to aggressively expand, we are receiving those VC funds and impact investment funds. India is a hub for everyone to get inside. Name it Facebook, Walmart, WhatsApp. Everyone looks us at as consumers, and rightfully so. We are the largest youth population. Everyone wants. They come to India because they feel that they have a 1.5 people, 1.5 billion people ready to consume whatever they prepare. But why don't we encourage our indigenous, make in India startups, the self-reliance? When we're speaking about self-reliance, why are we not relying on them to spur the, like, you can't expect a company like Infosys to hire 5 crore people. That's not going to happen. But you can expect probably 5,000 startups or maybe 50,000 startups to hire, like, 5 crore youngsters.
So let me come. Let me take your point, Agni. You're saying that you should make do with what the government has presented. Be happy with what the government has presented, and of course, there should be more money that should go into skilling and upskilling people in the startup ecosystem. Mr. Khan, if you look at the budget report card, in terms of what was promised and what really panned out in 2020, what is your view on that?
Well, 2020, as you know, was a year that completely skidded out of control. So it's not fair to compare. But see, the long-term expectation, right? With and they have been moving in that direction. Is continuously to make things easier, to simplify things, to focus on certain priority areas. They've recognized that startups are very important. A few years ago, I think when Modi ji first came, he announced this 10,000 crore fund, which then went into operation with Siddhi. Then, now he's announced this 1,000 crore fund for incubators. That fund, as you know, was for funding funds. We are also beneficiary of that fund, which is being administered through Siddhi. So they do have this focus on the startup sector. They have been sensitive to what people have been saying about offshore jurisdictions, and they've been listening to that. SEBI has been responsive in that area. So, budget is one organ and one arm of the government, right? There are many other organs and arms of the government. So, ever since Modi ji went on stage and said, spoke about Startup India, he did put the spotlight on our sector, and there have been multiple organs of the government which have been working to better it. India is a large country. There are many departments. Things are slow, but we've been getting there. It's not right to just compare 1 year, but now if I go and I compare 5 years, right, the amount of progress that has been made from the government from a startup perspective is tremendous. Right?
It's
I mean,
very
from the
clear
food
because
front,
in the budget document, in the budget speech, I was looking at the number of times the word startup has been used. This time around, it's been used 16 times. And over the last 2 to 3 years, this is perhaps, the government has been laying so much importance to the startup sector that the mention of the word startup in the union budget really signifies the kind of impetus and the push that the government has towards this sector. But Agni, when you talk about ease of doing business, you belong to a very niche sector. You have drones that you manufacture, of course. What would you classify as ease of doing business, and what more do you require from the government from a startup point of view?
So I'll give you a very simple example of, let's say we are India's largest agro drone manufacturers and service providers. So we basically help farmers to spray pesticides and fertilizers in a much faster, more accurate and a safer manner for the farmers, right? But if you look at the drone regulations, it pretty much will shoo away any investors who will want to put in or pump in money into the drone segment, because the regulations are a little haphazard. And then the mindset of the government towards dealing with drones has definitely changed over the last year, so to speak, compared to the prior 5 years it was. But when we're talking about the mindset of the government when it comes to drones, they try and equate it to the levels of how a Ministry of Civil Aviation works. So the mindset is like, oh, so drones need to be treated the same way like you treat a commercial airliner. You can't do that because, a commercial airline, there might be 1,500, 2,000 planes max, and there's like already 1 lakh plus drones that are registered. How can you equate apple and oranges, or more so in this particular case, Mount Everest and probably like a Tirupati, So you can't do that. And I think the way regulation needs to be hastened to spur the kind of innovation, especially in a segment like drones, which is you have a competitor for us, or like you can say there is a company called as DJI, which I'm sure many of us would know, people use it. It's an $18 billion company, whereas we do not have even one single drone company in India which is nearing a unicorn startup level, which is $1 billion. The reason is that drones, believe it or not, are still illegal to use in India until and unless you have exemptions to do so, and the safety regulations has not matched what the government has in mind. So the stall is causing a huge sluggish a situation for the entire drone industry. So you don't see startups hiring 300, 400 people, like how you can see like a Zomato opening up its places all over the place. You can't have that because of the regulations. I think from that perspective, I just felt that the government, like Mr. Khan said, the budget is only a segment of what the government needs to do. This is just a message that goes on. But after that, does the fund really flow through all these departments? Is the fund genuinely utilized? Are they diverted to the right places? Are the right people getting access to those funds? All those things remains to be seen. And it just feels that, after a rough year that we've had as an entire country, it is going to take a little bit of time for us to get kick started into that aggressive $5 trillion, $10 trillion economy mindset. But I'm still positive because, hey, listen, it could still be a lot worse. So that's how I'm looking at the budget right now. It could be worse, but we can definitely take a lot of positives into it and keep moving forward towards the future.
Well, no news is good news, as I was telling Mr. Khan earlier. So, of course, that has left everyone happy. Just one last closing comment from you, Mr. Khan. Two expectations going forward that you feel the government should implement going forward. What is your ask from the government going forward?
I think the two that we discussed, Priya, fix ESOPs, fix LTCG on private exits, bringing it at par with public exits. I think if we can do these two things, right, I mean, this is 80% of the battle won in really, really fostering a domestic, strong, even stronger startup industry. Not that it's not yet strong, but even stronger, self-reliant startup industry where we are less dependent on external capital, where we have access to the very best talent. If they can get those two things done, that will be a huge impetus.
All right. On that note, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today for this very engaging discussion. I think we've got some very good perspectives on what the budget really means for the startup and the investor ecosystem and what more can be done. On that note, many thanks for joining us on the budget special of Daily Dispatch. Goodbye and many thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Okay.